Many analysts expect that China will again save the world as the growth of the major global economies slows due to high inflation, which is made worse by the conflict in Ukraine. However, this is unlike 2008, when Western nations recovered from the financial crisis far more quickly thanks to China's then rapidly expanding economy and a massive stimulus program launched by the Beijing government. China's economic problems are severe at this time. Premier Li Keqiang cautioned last month that there was little demand for more expansionary measures. The government has given up on this year's objective of 5.5% GDP growth. Beijing's zero-COVID policy has hampered business and consumer activity in the second-largest economy in the world, resulting in months-long worker lockdowns in dozens of cities and the closure of countless firms. Chinese policymakers are reluctant to change the harsh policies at this time for fear of sparking a more serious catastrophe. China can't learn to live with COVID. In actuality, China has not dealt with COVID in the same way as the rest of the world. Therefore, if the virus were to suddenly sweep the nation, there would be economic upheaval, Mercator Institute for China Studies, MERICS, based in Berlin, senior analyst Jacob Gunter told DW. There is a lot of vaccine hesitation, says the author. They don't have a highly modern healthcare system, there isn't any built-up immunity, and they refused to import the mRNA vaccines. Even worse, the recent government crackdown on the debts of real estate developers prompted a real estate meltdown that brought China Evergrande, one of the top builders in the nation, to the brink of insolvency. Chinese homebuyers have ceased making mortgage payments for unfinished flats. Bank loans for real estate acquisitions have decreased for the first time in 10 years, and the amount of residential floor space, a gauge of new construction activity, declined by almost half in the second quarter. China analyst Craig Botham of Pantheon Macroeconomics said, "The property slump is the bigger problem than the zero-COVID policy. Lockdowns have proved that the economy can swiftly bounce back, but the harm caused by declining asset prices in a sector that accounts for 30% of GDP is far more destructive. Local governments, banks, and households all have weak financial sheets." China's central bank this week reduced interest rates after industrial production and retail sales expanded less than anticipated, and oil consumption plummeted 10% year-over-year in July. However, the bank hesitates to unleash further monetary stimulus until inflation and the epidemic are under control. China cuts while the world hikes rates. In contrast to the rest of the globe, where countries are raising their rates, this is taking place, Gunter told DW. China has the opposite difficulties that we have in the United States and Europe, the speaker continued, adding that Chinese customers are reluctant to spend because of concern that they would be imprisoned without pay. According to Botham, the most recent rate cuts are unlikely to impact economic development for two reasons significantly. One is that there is no requirement to pass them on to the real economy. They will only have an immediate impact on bank funding costs. The second and more significant is the sharp decline in loan demand. The Economist continued, "I believe the PBOC, People's Bank of China, feels compelled to respond while knowing that anything it does will have little effect. The central government has attempted to divert focus away from Beijing by urging regional governments to do more to help stabilize the economy and increase employment prospects. This was viewed with skepticism because the likelihood of additional stimulus is on hold." Botham cautioned that local governments cannot do much more, since their balance books are full of holes. The federal government needs to intervene. An expert with Pantheon Macroeconomics recommended switching from supply-side to demand-side policies. Beijing announced 50 policy changes in May to assist regions in emerging from lockdowns. They featured additional subsidies as well as company and consumer tax reductions. Before last month's Politburo meeting, Li said this week's trip to the southern tech metropolis of Shenzhen was part of an economic fact-finding tour. Xi under pressure to boost demand. Following last week's front-page appeal for new pro-growth policies by a state-backed tabloid, pressure is already mounting on China's leaders. Financial News quoted Wen Bin, the chief economist at China Minsheng Bank, saying that Beijing should increase its stimulus spending to increase demand. The study also urged improved industrial policy and real estate market reforms, arguing that doing so would spur a resurgence in both production and consumption. As President Xi Jinping runs for re-election as Chinese leader at the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, opposition to new stimulus measures may weaken over the coming months. The Hong Kong tabloid Ming Pao reports that the summit, which is scheduled for November, will probably endorse Xi's third term. The impact of any future expansionary policies by Beijing is likely to be limited for the West, according to Botham, unlike in 2008, when China's 4 trillion yuan, $586 billion, 579 billion euros, monetary stimulus helped to stabilize the global economy. However, he asserted that they could be able to facilitate the dilemma brought on by rising living expenses that were harming Western economic growth. Without a doubt, China won't save the world economy during this cycle. There will be no new commodity supercycle, and China's hopes for one will be disappointed. However, during the next 12 months, China will export disinflation and even deflation to the rest of the globe, which will help lower global inflation. This is due to the focus on supply-side policies and the weakening of Chinese demand. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoy this video and want to hear from me again, hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.